Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zillow. My name is Kristen Acker. I'm the Vice President of Product Teams here, so I manage a broad swath of the product development organization, including developers, design, test, and program management here. And I just wanted to welcome you all here. I'm really excited to see all your faces. I'm sorry for the dark evening, but hopefully you can see this is the view at night, which is pretty darn lovely. But in the daytime, it's gorgeous out there. We get to watch the ferry boats. And that beautiful foggy day we had last week was just incredible. But listening to the ferry boats come in and trying to not hit anything. So we have a great lineup for you tonight of three of the women who work here, and I'm really excited for you to hear them. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about Zillow. You'll hear some more from them along the way. So what Zillow, our mission is to build the world's largest, most trusted and vibrant home-related marketplace. We have homes for sale. We have 115 million homes that we have information on. We have rentals. We have mortgages. We have home improvement. We have lots and lots of different things that all kind of center around the home and helping people find their next home. And we've been at this we launched in 2006, so we just had our 10th anniversary of the website, and I've been here for a little longer than that. And we have product development that happens in a whole bunch of different stacks. So we have Python and we have Java. We have iOS and Android. We're doing a lot of work in React right now. We have a lot of different databases and database types that we have. So depending on what you're working in, we probably have it here. And if we don't, maybe we should, so you can talk to us about that. But I'm excited that you're here, and I wanted to start off inviting Joyce to come up. Joyce Wu is going to be your first speaker, so I'll take it away.
Thank you, Kristen. Let's see if my presentation will come up. Okay. So, like Kristen said, my name is Joyce Wu. I've been working as a developer for 10 years, if you count my internships. I started my career at Microsoft. I've interned at Amazon. I've also interned at Microsoft, and I'm now a development manager here at Zillow. So the idea behind this presentation is when I graduated from college, there were a lot of things that I didn't know that are really painfully obvious to me now. And the idea is that I am giving my past self some advice that I've learned the hard way. So I timed myself last night, and it took me 25 minutes. But because I'm nervous, I'm sure I will speak twice as fast. So please feel free to interrupt me and ask me questions, because I'd much rather have a conversation with you than talk at you for 15 minutes. Okay. So I think the first thing that you do when you graduate, after you've done your interviews, is choosing that offer. I don't want to talk about interviewing because that would take me a lot longer than 15 minutes. But two things are really important to me when I'm looking at new jobs. The first one is I want to make sure that I find a really great manager. There are very few times in your career when you get to choose your manager. Most of the time, you're going to get reorged onto another team, or your manager is going to leave and get replaced by somebody else. But the one time when you do get to actually choose is when you go and you interview for other companies, other teams, and you meet the manager. So make the most of it, because your manager is so important to your happiness in your new job. You can read the slide yourself, but they help you find growth opportunities. They give you opportunities to do new work. They set expectations, and they're your interface to the company. So how do you go about choosing a manager? Because most of the time you get an offer, you're really excited about it because you're really excited about the company, or like you're going to San Francisco or New York or Seattle. Seattle's also a good city. How do you make sure that you get that great manager? What I do is I'll interview the manager. So if I didn't see the manager on my interview loop, then I'll ask HR, can I spend 20 minutes and talk with this manager? Make sure that we get along, that we can talk. But more importantly, I want to ask the manager if I can talk to one of his or her directs. And I ask the direct, how do you like working with this manager? Does this manager care about your career growth? How do you have regular one-on-ones? Do you feel like they're helping you in your career? I did that at Zillow. I've done that in the past, and it has worked out for me. And I regret not doing it when I haven't. So, next point is, I've interviewed maybe, I don't know, at least 50 people since I've joined the company. And almost everybody asks me, well, what is the tech stack? Like, what technology am I going to work in? And that's a really good question to ask because, you want to be familiar with the technology that you're going to go, do daily. But what I think a lot of people miss is, there's another thing that's really important. That's, how well is the business doing? I've had maybe 2 or 3 candidates ask me about the business. And here's an anecdote for why this is important. So when I left college, I had a choice. I could go work for Amazon, and this was 8 or 9 years ago, so Amazon was much smaller back then. Or I could go work for Microsoft and work on some really cool technology because I got an offer from Surface, which at the time was selling a coffee table and not a tablet. So it's a big difference from what you're used to, probably. But I made my decision entirely based on the cool technology. And I did not think about the business. And I don't know if I would have made a different decision had I considered the business. But when I look at it now, it seemed obvious to me that I definitely should have taken that into consideration because the stock price at Amazon when I was an intern was $50. And I think today it is something like $800. So there was a missed opportunity there. Okay, so next thing you do is you've chosen a job, you like your manager and you think the business is sound, you like the technology. So now what do? You're starting a new job. What should you be paying attention to? So my first point here is that when you leave college or when you leave a job that is highly stressful, which are the 2 major factors for why people leave jobs and look for other ones, and among others, you tend to be slightly burned out. And that is not a good state to be in when you're starting a new job. It's a terrible way to start a new job because your first few months are probably the most important time as far as building your reputation. Your manager is deciding what your capabilities are, what kind of opportunities they're going to be able to give you, and what kind of trajectory you're going to have. So you want to bring your best self for those first 3 months. And if that means that you need to take a couple months off without pay, just hang out with your parents at home, you should do it because you'll do better in your new job. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, this team needs me right now, so I should join and contribute as soon as I possibly can. Take some time for yourself because you're not going to have time again until you're retired. And who knows when that's going to happen. So the next point is make friends. This point used to be called networking, but I'm told that networking is a scary word. But I think when I say networking, I mean talk to your coworkers. Your coworkers, the average tenure of a programmer in technology is 2 years. So they're going to move around. And if they like working with you and they know what you're capable of, they might want you to move with them. That is how I got my job at Zillow. I got referred by one of my old coworkers from Microsoft. So don't eat lunch alone. I know that's cliche, but make friends with your coworkers. And if you find coming to networking events like this and talking to strangers scary, at least you can do that. My next point is when you start a new job, find a mentor. So there are 3 people at this company that I consider my mentors. And we have regular meetings every month, and we talk about different things. Some of them are just, sometimes I just use my mentor as a sounding board to say, okay, well, like I'm in this situation, this is how I reacted. Does that sound sane to you? Like, what could I have done differently? The other place where I find mentors useful is giving me perspective. So, for example, when I was at Microsoft, I had a mentor who had previously been a manager at Microsoft in Windows, and I was having a hard time communicating with my current manager, and I got a lot of insight from my mentor into what he may be thinking, my manager at Microsoft, what he might have been thinking, and that definitely helped me get through. So take the time, find a mentor. You're not going to get a mentor unless you go look for one. You'll get sponsors, but not a mentor. Okay. And also, any questions so far? In the back. So at Microsoft, there was a matching tool, and my first mentor I found through the matching tool, and actually that relationship didn't work out that well. So the way I found the mentor that I worked with that really helped me was like I just had lunch with people, like different sets of people. We'd have conversations, and I really liked the way that this person thought he was successful. Like he was a principal IC. He'd been a manager. I liked the way he thought, and basically I thought that he'd be able to help me. So I asked him, and he said, "Oh, sure." Like I was the first person to ask if he would be a mentor for at all. So ask, I guess, is the key. At Zillow, I got Kristen to create a wiki page with a list of people who would be willing to be mentors, and I picked people off that list, and I also asked Lynn, who is sitting right there. So yeah, does that answer your question? Thank you. All right. Okay, so the next point is, so you've been at your company for a couple years, and you're wondering, well, how can I get promoted? How can I get to the next level? How do I make a bigger impact? And I think at a certain point, doing a good job isn't good enough to get yourself promoted. So doing a good job just means that you're doing the right thing at your level. You're getting compensated fairly. You really need to look for opportunity for yourself. Like if you have a really good manager, then they might be more proactive about getting you promoted and finding you new opportunities. But you have to let them know that. So think about what does my org need? What does my team need? What does my manager need? And is there some skill that I have that could help my team, my org, my manager get there? And also very important is, can I do it without dropping my other work? So promoting yourself, it may be more than a 40-hour-a-week task. If you have a really good manager, then maybe it's just 40 hours, but I have not necessarily seen that to be the case. Second point is make sure that you find time to learn. So doing your job, like you'll learn a bunch of new technologies. You'll grow. You'll gain scope, but by just doing your job. But if you want a bigger role, if you want something that's tangential to what you're doing, or you want to make a switch from being like a lower level IC to somebody that writes architecture, then you really need to learn outside of work. And this is something that you can negotiate with your manager, giving you time. So I've done things like taken a course at DigiPen about writing animation engines, of all things. And there's online courses that we offer at Zillow from Linda. And all of these things, I've talked to my manager about, like, can I take some time off of work to go take this course? If you have a good manager who believes in you, who you've been doing good work for, then that shouldn't be too big of an ask. And then if you find that your manager doesn't want you to do these things, then, well, okay, figure out what you can do for your manager to have them let you do that, or maybe consider finding a new job. Yeah. The last point in this section is work-life balance. So much like getting promoted and growing your career, this one's on you. So you have to figure out how much time you need to stay happy and healthy. And you have to push back when people encroach on that time. You're not always going to have perfect work-life balance, but you should be. But most of the time, you should have enough time to exercise, to sleep, to hang out with your friends, to spend time with your family. And if you don't have that, it's going to impact your work. So it's not just work-life balance isn't just about, at least to me, it's not just about having enough time to do all of the things that I need to do for myself. It's also about being effective at work. Because if I'm not happy, if I haven't had enough sleep, if I'm not healthy, then I'm not going to be able to do as good of a job as I could otherwise. And then final point is be brave. So take risks. I stayed at Microsoft for longer than I should have. And one of the reasons I stayed was because I was worried about, well, what is going to happen to my 401k? Like, how does rolling over a 401k work? Like, what am I going to do with my health benefits? Like, how does that stuff all work? People have solved these problems before. You can figure all this stuff out. Ask your friends. Don't let silly things like that hold you back. Also, I'm sure you've all heard it before, but there's a common thing where women tend to look at job opportunities and see that, okay, there's a list of 5 qualifications for this job. I don't have all of them, so I'm not going to apply. But a man who sees that same listing, who is equally qualified, will say, okay, well, I have 2 of those 5 qualifications. I'm qualified. I'm going to interview. Just try it out. Trust your ability to learn. Don't hold yourself back because you're afraid. And that is all I have. So, you guys have any questions? Okay. I think Amy is next. So, okay.
All right. Hello. Let me get this adjusted. My name is Amy Winther, and I am a UX design manager here. So I manage a small team of designers. And this is just so fun. I love getting a group of women together, right? It's just really fun. I feel like you guys are all my sisters. So I wanted to start off by just introducing you to one of my best friends. And we're talking about user-centered design today. And even if you aren't a designer, I think there's a lot to learning about design, because I think we actually are all designers, whether you're an engineer or a PM or a copywriter, a marketer. You're all interacting with design, because design is really an experience that someone has with a website or an app or a service. So anyway, I'm really passionate about design, so let's get started. So like I said, I wanted to introduce you to one of my best friends. This is Julie. And if you were to meet her tonight, you'd probably learn a few things pretty quickly about her. You probably learned that she is really passionate about kids, and especially kids with special needs. She's a teacher for them, and I lived with her for a few years, and she would just come home with so many stories, so excited to tell me what had happened throughout the day. And one thing that you might not know about her right away, but you might learn over the years of getting to know her, is that she actually faces a lot of challenges in that line of work, because she actually has a lot of back problems. And if you imagine being a teacher, or if you're a mom, you might know this, you're on the ground picking up kids a lot, you're shuffling them around, corralling them, and that's physically taxing on a lot of people, but especially for her. But ultimately what you'd find out in talking with her is that she really values family and friendships, and that she'll really do anything to support those people in her life. So why do I introduce you to Julie? I want you to think about the work that you do, and the either the app that you work on, or the website, or service, or whatever you're involved with. And I want you to think about who is at the other end of that. Who are you designing that for? Who are you building it for? And can you describe them like you can describe your best friend? Can you tell somebody what they like, what they don't like, what their line of work is, what they face at work, what their challenges are? Because until you can describe who you're designing or building for to that depth, then you won't really know what problems to solve. So today we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about knowing who's on the other end. We're going to talk about starting with problems and not solutions. And then we'll wrap up with talking about how everybody around you can know number one and number two. So as Kristen started off mentioning, at Zillow, this is user-centered design is at the core of what we do. It's built directly into our mission, which is here. Power to the people. Build the largest, most trusted, and vibrant home-related marketplace. And when I think about this, I think, well, who are we giving this power to? It seems like we should really know who these people are, right? That we're giving power to. So I want to introduce you to them now. So these are personas. And you might be familiar with personas, you might not be, but these are archetypes of the real people who use our products. So up here in the upper left corner, we've got Rachel, the renter. We've got Beth, the buyer. You'll notice kind of a rhythm to the names. We've got Harriet, the homeowner, and Susan, the seller. And these people are really integrated with our work. We actually talk about them like they're real people. For example, I can tell you Susan is really stressed about selling her home, and she's really financially motivated. She just really wants to sell her home as fast as possible, and to make sure that she's actually making money in the process, and just in order so that she can focus on the fun part, which is buying a new home. And so we have crafted these people out of talking with a lot of real people who are using our products. We've called them on the phone. We've sometimes visited them. We've asked them to show us what they think about our products. We've asked them what else they're using or what else they're doing as they're home shopping or home buying. And through all of that research, we've been able to develop these. And then from there, you can see them over there on the wall. They're plastered all over our office. And we really do talk about these people like they're on our team. So just want to take a survey. How many of you feel like you have resources at your current job to be able to know your consumer? So a lot of you do. I wanted to give a few suggestions. So if you do have those resources, I really encourage you to reach out, because even though there might be a research team, you might not necessarily be familiar with the research. But I think if you reach out and start to learn about these people, it's going to really impact your work. You're going to start thinking about the things you're spending your time doing and going, is that applicable? And if you don't have a research team, then some just really quick suggestions. So think about who this person would be, and then think about what are they kind of up to in life, right? For example, a Facebook group. Maybe you're developing something for new moms, and maybe there's new mom Facebook groups that you could actually join and just see what people are talking about. you'll learn a lot through that. You could also think about where they would go in life. Maybe people that you're designing or building for hang out at coffee shops a lot, and so maybe you'll just go hang out at a coffee shop or go talk with some people and kind of get their feedback on things. It's just really important to know who the person is at the other end of the line. And what's going to come out of that is you're naturally going to start knowing their problems the more that you know those people. And these problems should be the catalyst for building really quality experiences. Because you have empathy for somebody, and it's really fun to solve problems, right? And so when you know that somebody's struggling with something, we just kind of naturally want to help them out. And we get to do that every day in our jobs if we think about it. So, but it's really hard, because oftentimes we have these things called backlogs, or we have people just handing us work to do. And so it's really easy to start doing this type of thing where it's, okay, next step, I'm going to build a renter profile. Good. I'm going to start doing that. I'm building a renter profile. Here's iteration A, iteration B, iteration C. I might even develop it, test it, ship it. But I actually don't know, well, it's probably for a renter, but I don't know why I'm doing it. And so what we've done at Zillow is adopted what we call a project framework board. And if any of you have heard of Lean UX, it's based off of that. It's a methodology to walk you through problem solving, really. And so if you type into Google project validation board after this talk, you can find materials to do that. But this is an abstract version of it. So rather than just starting off with a renter profile, because I know about renters, I know this problem, which is on the left-hand side. I know that the problem for a renter is that they're applying to a lot of places, and they have to fill out the same information over and over and over again about their rental history, and about who they are. Do you have a pet? Do you not have a pet? And that gets really repetitive, especially in a market here in Seattle where you might have to apply, gosh, like 5 or 6 times. I don't know how many of us have just applied so many times. And so when I think about that as a problem, there's actually a bunch of different possible solutions. One of them could be a renter profile. It could be that we create a tool where somebody puts in their information and then could attach that to the different applications. But if we start thinking about it, what if you only had to apply once? Well, how could you create a product that could allow you to only apply once? That's interesting. Or maybe, thinking big here, let's say we standardize a rental form across all of the U.S. So you only have to fill out one for anywhere you would apply. That's a viable solution. It's a lot harder, but it's a possible one. And if I only think about just the solutions in the center, then I'm really narrowing my scope of creativity, and I could miss out on some really viable solutions. So it's important for each one of these to have a metric so that at the end we can go back and see, well, did it actually affect anything? And then to also write out the assumptions. Like, for example, for the last one, it's like, we're assuming that we could standardize the form across the whole US. That's a big assumption. So after we apply this project framework board, we can then launch something new, and then we can go back to those people, those renters, and say, we heard you had this problem. What do you think about this solution? And then we're learning in that process. And that's what a user-centered design process is all about. So once you know who you're building or designing for, you know how to get there from a problem to a solution. It's really important to make sure you're not the only one who knows those two things. Because if you're the only one who is caring about that, it's not really going to affect change in your workplace. And so we want to make sure that everybody is getting aligned, and especially in a large company, this can be challenging. And it's something we face here at Zillow as we've gotten bigger, is you've got a lot of teams moving in a lot of directions, and all of a sudden you've got team A going over here, team B going over here, and team C going over here, and you might kind of all be going over after the same problem, but you've got different ideas, and you have conversations, and things get translated differently. So one tool that we've used here is design sprints. And these were started by Google Ventures, and there's a book called Sprint that you could look up. Has anybody here done a design sprint before? A few people. That's exciting. So what this is, it's a way to get you through a whole design process in a really short amount of time and to get everybody aligned. So you want to gather all of your stakeholders, so all the critical people who are making decisions along the process, stick them in a room together. Google Ventures splits it up into a 5-day process, and each day has these really, it's a very well laid out process. We've done that before and just found it to be a lot of time. I mean, how many of your CEOs are going to sit in a room for 5 days? Probably not that many. So what we've done is we've actually adopted it and compressed it to a 2-day process usually, but we've done as short as 3 hours even to create alignment. So day one, if we're to talk about it as a 2-day process, day one, you get everybody in a room and you go over all of the research and applicable information so that everybody is working off the same base. And by the end of it, you would have gone over maybe market research or competitive analysis. You'll look at what your current site is or what your current app is doing. You'll identify a problem. You'll talk about who you're solving it, who you're solving that problem for. And you really create this alignment. And then day two is about coming up with ideas. And the great thing about having everybody in a room is that it forces decisions to be made, right? You've got one person who wants to do it one way, one person to do it the other way, and you've got 4 hours on the clock. So you're just going to talk about it, and you're forced to all have alignment. And when we're all on the same page, that's when we can really move forward. We're all rowing in the same direction, and we can solve problems quickly and effectively. So that is a really helpful tool that we found. So what we've talked about is knowing who you're designing for or building for, and a helpful tool there is personas. Also knowing, it's really critical to know what you're solving, what problems, not just solutions, and project framework boards can be helpful for that. And then finally, the how you're going to get there, getting everybody aligned and using design sprints to accomplish that. So there's a lot more of the design process that we could talk about, but hopefully this gives you some really great avenues to go research and bring to your teams in order to build really quality experiences, because the people on the other end of what we're designing and building are really going to define our success. So thank you. Next up is Rebecca. Any questions? Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how the design sprints that you work on kind of interact with the maybe agile sprints the developers are working on, and kind of how your teams work.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So we do work in an agile environment. So usually we're on 2-week sprints. Design sprints are really kind of outside of that time frame. So usually we kind of call a design sprint when we're spinning the wheels. We're spending a lot of time and a lot of meetings trying to get people up to the same page, and it's just pretty clear that everybody's a little bit scattered, and it's a really specific problem that we're trying to solve. And it's just more efficient to just say, rather than all these meetings, let's just all get into a room. But that might be, months before the development team would even get there. Usually as designers, we have kind of the immediate work that's keeping up with the 2-week sprints, but we're working pretty well in advance of those 2 weeks. So we have time to do these and not be restricted to that 2-week development timeline. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Any other questions? All right. Here's Rebecca.
Let's see. I feel like I might be too fidgety for a podium, but I'm going to try. I just feel like I'm moving around. Hi. So I'm Rebecca Bastian. I'm also VP of product here. I have some parallel teams to Kristen, who initially introduced us. And I want to talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, which is the opportunity for tech companies to create social change. So first, just a little bit of background about me. I went to undergrad here at University of Washington and then grad school at UC Berkeley, both for mechanical engineering. So not doing that. And I spent a couple of years at Microsoft, and then I came over here to Zillow in the very early self-startup days. So I've been here over 11 years now, which has been super fun growing the company. I have two angelic little boys who are always that sweet and well-behaved. And I'm really passionate about homelessness and trying to solve homelessness in our community. And also I'm an aerial acrobat. So a little background. So I've been having a really fun time in my career in the tech community in Seattle and all the things I'm doing, and working on some really innovative new products here and just having a very fulfilled experience, which is great. But then I'm often contrasting that to looking around and seeing so many people who are struggling with just basic needs. And a lot of it comes down to housing affordability, which is something I also think about from just being in the real estate space. But it's a really big issue right now nationally and certainly in Seattle. We know that vacancy rates are at an all-time low and housing is an all-time high. And nationally, about a third of rental households are living below the federal poverty level. So it's something that's really apparent as you look at the data and as you just look around. And we know that housing affordability is really directly tied to homelessness. There was a study done here in King County about a year and a half ago that showed that for every $100 in rent increase, homelessness goes up by 15%, which is just staggering and scary. And it is so clear that there's something that needs to be done there, right? And so as I look around and I see people holding up signs or sleeping in tents, and we all see this around Seattle, I'm just struck so much by the need to problem solve. Fortunately, I'm a problem solver, as many of us are, right? And so I kind of set my mind on wanting to think through what potential solutions could be in this space. You know, I'm there putting my boys to bed every night, except for tonight where I'm here. But, you know, I tuck them in and I just think about, like, I can't imagine what it would be like to not be able to do that. And it's just heart-wrenching to me. So I've gotten really motivated. Our tagline here at Zillow is find your way home. And so I kind of set my mind to what can we do to help everybody find their way home. So this was a couple of years ago that I started really thinking about what can we be doing in this space. And the first step that I took was to start to learn because I just didn't really have much background on it. So I started talking to a lot of people, experts in the area, and just having conversations, reading articles. I eventually got invited to join a few different boards locally. All Home, which is our local continuum of care for kind of where the funds go in King County towards homelessness. The Technical Advisory Board for Seattle Housing Levy, and then the United Way Out of the Rain Impact Council. So learning a ton, although I will say that there's something to be said for not knowing anything too. So while it's really important to learn all you can about a space that you're trying to tackle and solve, it can also be really beneficial to have that kind of naivety of not knowing all the things that have already been tried, and all the, you know, people who've spent their careers doing this have experienced a lot of setbacks also, of course. And so I can walk in there and be like, oh, let's use technology and solve this. And while that's not entirely possible to solve right away, it's nice to not be jaded by past experience too. So anyway, a combination of learning as much as I could, but also having that kind of naive optimism got me to a point where I felt ready to jump in and try something. So that is how the Community Pillar program at Zillow was born. Was I decided that the problem that I'd like to try to solve in looking at all the different aspects that influence housing affordability and homelessness is that there's not enough private market there's not enough public housing, so affordable housing, to house everyone, and we really need the private market to get involved. So that's the landlords and property managers who are managing those rental units, and trying to get them to say, yes, I'd like to help get everyone into housing. So the idea behind the Community Pillar program is for landlords and property managers to self-identify as wanting to help people obtain housing. Now, we do a thing here at Zillow 3 times a year called Hack Week, which is super fun. And actually, Jasmine's in the back of the room there. She's in this photo. And I think Amy helped with one of the versions also, who just spoke. I've done this for a few Hack Weeks now and still going. But it's basically a week, a few times a year, where everyone in engineering and product and beyond kind of stops what they're doing and just works on their passion projects, anything that you want to work on. So people build internal tools or new feature ideas, all sorts of stuff. So I said, who here is interested in trying to help people who are struggling to obtain housing get into housing? And a bunch of people raised their hands because we have really caring, awesome people here. So we went for it. The first version was just about the supply side. So that was asking landlords and property managers to self-identify as just being willing to modify their standard tenant screening criteria to help people get into housing. So that could be overlooking a spotty credit score or employment history or housing history or criminal background, all the things that in a really competitive housing market can prohibit people from being able to get into housing. There's this story that I've heard locally several times about people that go through the whole lottery and the whole wait list and finally get a voucher for housing. So they have this guaranteed subsidy for rent, and they still can't get anyone to rent to them, and their voucher expires, which is such a heartbreaking story. So finding the landlords and property managers who want to just kind of help in that scenario and give people a chance. So we launched that, and we did a lot of partnerships with different government organizations and nonprofits trying to get the word out. And honestly, we didn't really know what to expect in terms of what the uptake would be. But we ended up at about the point where we had about 5,000 landlords and property managers signed up, and we're like, oh, that seems good. Let's keep going. So the next version that we built was the demand side. So now that we had this whole set of landlords and their respective rentals, then we built in search tools so that renters could easily find those properties. And so we created a search filter that surfaced both the community pillar properties that belong to those landlords and property managers. And then also something that we'd recently got on Zillow was income restricted units. So that's totally different supply side. That's the kind of government sponsored affordable housing versus the private market. But to a renter who's struggling to get into housing, they really want to see both those sets of inventory. So both the private market and the affordable housing. So we bundled those into a search filter. Renters could sign up for saved searches so they get notified as soon as a new property becomes available. And we launched that and did some outreach to try to expose that to renters. And it's been going pretty well. We now have about 25,000 community pillar landlords and property managers, which is, better than we expected. And hopefully there's still a ton of upside. And, because Zillow is not part of the transaction, we don't actually have all the data on what happens there. So it's mostly anecdotal. And I know there's a long ways to go. But about a month after we launched the search experience, I got a Facebook message from this guy that I didn't really know, but we'd become friends, and he had been experiencing homelessness. And he sent me a note that said, I just wanted you to know that I saw your post about your new community pillar search that you've been working on. And I looked at it, and he said, after 362 days of living out of my car, I just secured housing. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know how many other people it's affecting, and I have a feeling that we have a long ways to go still. But when you hear those stories, you're like, well, wait a minute, this isn't just a feature or a product. These are people. And if you're even impacting one person, that's just so moving, and it's so great to hear. So it's those kind of stories that keep me going with this. And we are still going. We're trying a soft launch locally right now, and then hopefully rolling it out nationally of a solution for a really important third party in the equation, which is the service provider. So we know that there's the supply and the demand side here, but for people experiencing homelessness or struggling to find housing, they're often working with case managers or housing specialists and stuff to help them get into the housing. So we did some focus groups with them and figured out that they would really like this kind of shared database of landlords that they like to work with, that they can kind of stay on top of their inventory. So we've built in this way for them to nominate community pillars, and then that triggers an email to the landlord who can then confirm it. But we're just working with a bunch of local nonprofits to test this out and see how it works for them and get feedback. But, hopefully that takes off as both a way to increase awareness and use of the program, and then also a way to provide some tools to these service providers that don't usually have the technology themselves built in. So it's been really motivating, and I think we have a long ways to go. But as I've been working on this, I keep getting on this soapbox talking about how important it is that we all try to do something to create social change and stuff. And the obvious question that I get back is, oh, that's so cool. How can I help? Which is a really good question. That's what we should all be asking, right? And well, I'd love to be able to be like, everybody come work on Community Pillar. Like, that doesn't really scale, right? So I've been thinking a lot about, well, how can we all help? And one idea that I had this past spring for answering that question is in thinking about, okay, there's all these nonprofits. I've been talking with more of them and getting to know them, but across a whole variety of interests and verticals that are doing amazing things and have people really dedicated to their cause, but don't have any tech help, right? Because they get funding and it's always earmarked for like operational costs or whatever, and it's really hard for them to build out creative new solutions. Then we have all these people in the tech community here who are saying I'd like to help. And it's like, oh, well, let's just connect them. And they, you know, the tech people can help the nonprofits. So we tried that, and we hosted this See Tech for Change Tech Volunteer Fair here last May, which was really awesome. This, by the way, is the first hashtag I've ever created. But I wanted to like try it out to see if I could keep the momentum going, which it kind of has. But basically it was that. We brought in 25 local nonprofits across a bunch of different verticals and about 150 volunteers from the tech community. And we vetted the projects really well first, because that was some advice I'd gotten, is make sure that they're really defined projects. And we connected them, and it was so awesome. There's just great energy and enthusiasm, and the nonprofits were so grateful for help, and the volunteers are really excited to learn about these different nonprofits and help them out. And it's something I'd like to keep going as kind of an annual thing here. And if you guys are interested, you can go to ctech4change.org, spelled with a 4, and sign up to be notified of future events and stuff too. But it was really cool. And I feel like this is the kind of event too that we can totally scale, or that anyone could scale and replicate, and could have some really big impact. So I'm excited about that. And I mean, you guys could also just like kind of go to your favorite nonprofit, or like find out who's working in an area you care about and say, hey, would you like some help? I'm a developer. I'm an SEO expert or whatever. And they'd be like, yes. I think they would all love help. So you could go even more grassroots with that. But the other thing in thinking about like how can I help is that, you know, we could all just try different things, right? We have these skills, and you know, I think that leadership comes from anywhere. So you don't even have to wait for somebody to give you the idea, or for something to hop on board, but just like there's so many problems that don't have technical solutions thought out for them. And this can come in the form of, you know, kind of within your bigger established company, right? It doesn't have to be a top-down initiative, but there's grassroots efforts that can happen. And that's how I started Community Pillar, was just, you know, gathering up employees who cared and doing this kind of grassroots thing. And now, you know, we have more of a government relations team now, and they're thinking through our corporate social responsibility and all these things. And, you know, they're embracing Community Pillar. But when this started, it was just kind of like, let's just try something, you guys. And then there's also like, there's some really cool startups out there. Like, there's tons of them, but I have some friends that have done stuff around like safe anonymous donations to people experiencing homelessness, or crowdfunding to build villages that have been torn down. Or, I mean, there's just so many different things you could think about that you just kind of start from scratch, like a startup model, and build out a solution to solve the social problem that you're seeing. The kind of common denominator between all of these things is kind of creative problem solving and following a passion for helping in a certain area. So when I think about how do you get started if you want to be creating that change, and I think it's as simple as just 3 questions that you can be asking yourself. So the first one is, what are you passionate about? And that's so important. So for me, you know, I feel really passionate about homelessness because of what I see around me and because of working in this housing space. And that's really driven me to keep thinking about it. You know, if you're not passionate about something, you'll probably burn out because you'll hit obstacles, or, you know, just time and responsibilities take their toll. And so you really need to have something that's driving you. The second question is, what skills do you have? And it can be so many different skills, right? So are you a developer? Are you great at coordinating people and resources? Are you great at describing complex ideas in compelling ways, or, there's so many different things that you can bring to the table in terms of your skill set. And then the last question is, what resources can you leverage? So I realized that having the leading rental network in the country is a little bit serendipitous when you're trying to build a housing solution, but there's so many different resources that you can think about. So is it, code that you can be building on top of? Is it data that you have access to? Is it people that you can rally together, even physical space, right? There's so many different things there that you can think about as resources that you have. And we all have so many resources at our disposal when you really think about it, right? I think that us in the tech and the business communities have this really unique position where we have passion and skills and resources that can all come together to really create some change. So once you ask yourself those questions, the next step is just to try something, right? Not everything's going to work right away. And we know that nothing will work without trying it, though. So I invite all of you to think about what you're passionate about and just take a stab at trying to solve it. That's it. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, or I'll be around for a little bit too? Okay, well, I think we're all sticking around for a little bit, so please hang out some more. Also, I would be amiss to not mention that we are hiring too, so if you have any, if you ever want to chat about that, some recruiters here also, but please hang out and chat with us. Thank you so much.